You ever doubt God? I think you do. I think if you're honest, you do. Some time ago, a couple of years ago, on Wednesday night, we entered into a study of apologetics, and that was one of the first things that we talked about was the reality of God, and this will be similar, not quite the same, as we're taking a little bit different direction today. But there are most people will admit to the fact that at some point in their life, they doubt God. And I'm no different. Even though I was in ministry and preaching and teaching the Bible and studying it on a regular basis, there was a point where I just kind of stopped and thought, is all of this real? Is God real? Now, you think about it from a logical standpoint, why would someone who is the creator of the entire universe choose to come and live with us, to leave this wonderful place that we call heaven, if it really existed, at least what I was thinking about then? Why would he leave that, come spend time with us, and then allow himself to be put on a cross, to die a terrible, terrible death for us? That doesn't make sense. And so there was doubt. And today we're going to continue our series of non-negotiables that are often questioned, talking about the reality of God. And I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you can believe in the existence of God. I want to begin by reading Psalm 19. We're going to look at verses 1 through 6 of Psalm 19. And I just want to read those. Just the words here that the psalmist wrote are encouraging and even exciting. The heavens declare the glory of God. The sky proclaims the work of his hands. Day after day they pour out speech. Night after night they communicate knowledge. There is no speech. There are no words. Their voice is not heard. Their message has gone out to all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens he has pitched a tent for the sun. It is like a groom coming from the bridal chamber. It rejoices like an athlete running a course. It rises from one end of the heavens and circles to the other end. Nothing is hidden from its heat. So the Bible tells us clearly that the heavens declare the glory of God. It teaches us that it doesn't matter where you're from, whether you've lived in the Bible Belt all your life or you've lived in some remote portion of Africa on the other side of the world where you have no access to the gospel, that still people need to understand that God is a God. But yet, we doubt. And I want to talk briefly about why we doubt the existence of God. There is, first of all, something we call natural doubt. And children naturally begin to doubt some existence in things that we tell them around certain holidays. As they get older, they just begin to doubt these things. Truth is, it's hard to believe in an invisible being, no matter what people tell you about it. No matter how much they tell you that God exists, it's hard to believe in that invisible being. Now, understand that God not only knows that you're that way and understands that you're that way, but he empathizes with the fact that you are that way. In Jude chapter 1, the Bible clearly tells all of us to have mercy on some who doubt. And those 6 words tell us that God is empathetic toward those of us who used to or occasionally question the reality of a being we have not seen but have committed our lives to serving. There is also philosophical doubt. We've already cited that this morning. It is the argument of the existence of evil and suffering in the world. Why would such a good God allow evil and suffering? There is experiential doubt. Maybe you grew up in a family that didn't believe in God. Maybe you grew up in a place where God was never mentioned. That would be experiential doubt, but also the experience that leads many people to deny the existence of God is one of being disappointed by God. A church leader let you down. You lost a child. You were betrayed by the love of your life. You were abused by a parent. Unanswered prayers seem to be a reality, and you have experiential doubt. Then we're going to call this spiritual doubt, but it can also be linked a little bit to intellectual doubt, because we tend to assume that most people who don't believe in God, most atheists, are intellectual giants who have examined all the philosophical elements of the universe and have come to the conclusion that there is no God. We sometimes have this secret fear that the atheist has discovered some smoking gun that we haven't seen yet, that there really is no God. I want to point you to Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 20, where Paul absolutely eliminates that and talks about the fact that there is a reason to believe in God and that no one is without excuse. And atheists have received this general knowledge of God that's mentioned there in Romans chapter 1, but yet they have rejected it. And contrary to popular belief, atheists are not earnestly scouring the universe looking for any evidence that God may exist. You get that? They're not. I said this on a Wednesday night, but it makes the most sense. An atheist has no more interest in finding a God than a thief has in finding a police officer. Truth is, the atheist deliberately rejects the evidence for God that is all around him. Then we have empirical doubt. Few atheists admit that they are rejecting the abundance of evidence for God for spiritual reasons. They say it's empirical. They try to convince people that science has driven the final nail in the coffin of faith. Richard Dawkins, if you don't know who he is, he's one of the most prominent atheists of our time, a very brilliant man. I checked today just to make sure, actually this morning, I Googled to make sure he still hadn't changed his mind about believing in God. He's a staunch atheist, but he's old. He's in his 70s. And so, I'm sorry, he's older. He's in his 70s. Oops. I'm almost there. And so one of these days he's going to wake up and he's going to have an absolute belief in God. So that's what I checked to make sure he hadn't died recently. He said that in his best-selling book, The God Delusion, that it's impossible to be a scientific thinker and a theist, or someone who believes in God. He says that only 7% of American scientists who are members of the National Academy of Sciences believe in a personal God. And that is true. You can't deny that. But he still doesn't believe in God, but one day he will. And the average person, when they hear that, the Gallup actually did a poll that said, what's your concern about that question? And people who believe in God are threatened highly by that statistic, that most scientists don't believe in God. Well, I just kind of want to refute that because it's such a big deal, because so many of us think that those scientists are brilliant people. And really, it's not hard to throw that out. Not hard at all. Two reasons. First, they fail to identify the cause-effect relationship there. I mean, are they scientists because they don't believe in God? Or are they not believe in God because they are scientists? And that's something that you have to ask. I have a great friend of mine who is a 5-point, staunch advocate of Calvinism, hyper-Calvinist. He believes in predestination. In no other way, shape, or form can the Bible say anything but predestination. But when I talk with him about scriptures, and he's reading the scriptures, he often will send me those because I am not a 5-point Calvinist. I'm about 3.5 points. He will send me scriptures all the time, and I send them back, and I say, dude, are you reading the scriptures to find the truth, or are you reading the scriptures to find predestination? Oh, come on. I'm like, yeah, well, that's the case. Is it cause and effect? And that's the same thing here with these scientists. The second problem I have with that is that their first presupposition is that there is no God, and that the earth and the universe were not created, and therefore they eliminate that possibility from the very beginning, which actually is not scientific. Wait a minute, isn't it true that there is the possibility of some supreme being that created all of this? That is a scientific possibility. Therefore, when you say there cannot be a God because the earth and the universe have not been created, that's called circular reasoning, and it doesn't work, not even in scientific fields. So, don't be afraid of those super intellectuals that have all the answers, because they don't. The question I pose to you today then is, does God exist? Now, almost everybody in this room today would say, without a doubt, yes, I believe that God exists. How? I mean, can you prove the existence of God? I want to say to you very clearly and very plainly, we who believe in God cannot prove the existence of God. There is nothing you can do to absolutely, positively prove the existence of God. You say, well, I don't know. What do you mean? I don't get that. How do you know? Well, you say that there You can't prove it? Aren't we supposed to believe it? Well, we can believe it, but we can't prove it. We can see the evidence of God, and that's what we see. When I get home, I often find Missy in the kitchen doing something or somewhere else, and I'll say, "Are the kids home?" And she'll say, "I think so. But I don't know. I haven't seen them." Well, I have a good idea that the kids are home. Number one, when I drove in the driveway, there were 4 or 5 cars parked all over my grass, killing it dead when it's supposed to be pretty and green. That's evidence number one. Evidence number two is that I listen, and it sounds like there's a herd of buffalo feeding upstairs in the man cave, so that's evidence number two. Then there is the idea that my refrigerator is empty. Evidence number three. What's that? Yeah, it is your fault. It's equally. Well, it's safe to assume that the kids are home. Can I prove that the kids are home? Nobody goes up there but me in the man cave, so somebody's up there. Can I absolutely prove that the kids are home? No, I can't. It could be the Houston Rockets up there going through a walkthrough before their next playoff game. It could be. Not likely, but it could be. But according to the evidence, atheists, they choose to ignore all the evidence that those people that stay at my house are there and say that they don't exist. That's what they say about God. It's ridiculous. Atheists, however, cannot prove that God does not exist. It is impossible to prove an affirmative proposition that is really existential. We can prove that. All we have to do is find God. It is possible to prove that. Now, it is impossible to prove a negative existential proposition. Let me give you an illustration. Someone might say in this room that there is a man on this earth that's better looking than Richard Runnels. Don't laugh at that. Davelin might say that that man does not exist. The first person who says that there is a man better looking than Richard only needs to go find one man, and in my opinion, not very far, to find that man that looks that looks better than Richard does. Davelin, however, would have to scour every corner of the universe and make sure she looks everywhere for a man that might be better looking than him. You can't prove that. And so we actually have the easier task there. And so what I want us to look at today is not that God absolutely is proven to exist, but I want us to look at this, the evidence for the existence of God. And I'm going to give you 5 things that can help you know that God exists. Now, I'm going to give you a simple term, and then if you're arguing with some intellectual giant, I'm going to give you a big long word, okay? So you can sound really smart. And I got them out of a book, so there you go. I, of course, didn't make these up. What's that? Really? Oh, I better go. The first one is the universe. And we're going to call this the cosmological argument. The universe itself is a powerful, powerful pointer to the existence of God. The very existence of the universe creates the question, how did the universe get here? It's big, it's beautiful, and all the parts work well together. All right, now think about it. If nothing existed, how do you explain it? Now, there are those that used to think, not the theology, but the thought of the day for a lot of years was that the universe had always existed. Well, now scientists have said the universe is decaying, and we can see that its energy is running out. So it has not always existed. It came into being at some time. If the universe was infinite, we would already run out of juice because we know that it's running out of energy. So how did it get here? If nothing existed, would you have to explain it? No. If there wasn't anything here, we wouldn't be here to explain it. Again, circular reasoning. But the moment something exists, a question can be raised of its origin. How did it get here? There's been many a scientist who've attempted to answer that question, the origin of the universe, who have ultimately found God. Now, you don't hear Richard Dawkins and all those people talking about these guys, but it happens regularly. The most obvious answer to how did the universe get here is that it came from something else. It came from somewhere, from something. Animals come from their parents. Plants come from seeds. Houses come from builders. A builder builds a nice house. Cars come from factories. In fact, everything in the universe comes from something else. It's contingent on something that came before it. It's easy to see that. Everything exists, everything that exists depends on something else. Humans, we depend on food to live. Plants, they depend on photosynthesis from the sun. The sun depends on gravity to keep it from breaking apart. So everything in the universe came from something else, and everything is dependent on something else in order to exist. Now, push way back. Way back. Where'd all that stuff come from? The answer most people come to is God. Everything in the universe was created by something else, and it depends on something else. The cause of all of this must be something that is untreated and independent. Or in positive terms, it is something that is eternal and self-sufficient. Who does that sound like? The only thing that could fit such a description is God. We've established already that the universe has not always existed, so it had to come from something. And God tells us in that passage in Psalms that He is speaking to us, He is communicating to us. You can see that God's saying, I'm here, I exist. You can tell because I made this place. This is a fascinating place. And I don't know how much you've studied it, but it is fascinating. One of my favorite sermons of all time recently preached was by Louis Giglio, and he talks about the intricacies of the universe, and it's just awesome to see what God has done. But it doesn't have to be in the 2000s that you see that. Everything that has been made must have had a maker, because the French skeptic way back, his name was Voltaire, he once said this: I shall always be convinced that a watch proves a watchmaker. In the same way, the universe proves the existence of God. It is evidence of the existence of God. Not only do we have the universe, but we have the Creator. We call this the teleological argument. Chart the path of the stars. Measure the decay rate of an atom. Examine the laws of physics. Everything you study is well ordered, precise, and complex. Take a jigsaw puzzle, keep it in its box, and shake it, and open the box and see if it's put together. Do that an infinite number of times, and according to the evolutionist, the puzzle will be perfect. Now, that's easy argument to make. Well, we can't live long enough to shake it enough times to make it fit together perfectly. But according to them, there is no creator, and that these things just happen that way. Stare up at the night sky. Walk along a beach at sunset. Put a snowflake under a microscope. Everywhere you go, this place is filled with beauty. Incredible beauty. And this beauty and complexity in the universe not only point to a creator, but they point to the nature of the creator. They tell us about him, that he was ingenious, that he was beautiful, and that he was detailed. Plato decided that it was reasonable to believe in God based on, quote, the order of the motion of the stars and of all things under the dominion of the mind which ordered the universe. Isaac Newton said, when I look at the solar system, I see the earth at the right distance from the sun to receive the proper amounts of heat and light. This did not happen by chance. Smart guys. That's a Coke. How did it get here? I got a theory. A good theory. Millennia ago, a huge explosion sent a small meteor spinning through space. As it cooled, a caramel-colored effervescent liquid formed on its surface. As time passed, plastic crept out of the water and shaped itself into just these dimensions. Over time, this thing was formed into this bottle-like thing with a plastic neck on it. And then out of that grew a screw top. Centuries later, red and white paint fell on this in just the right form to put Coca-Cola on one side and Jeff on the other. Getting there. Takes more time to do 2 liters. It fits perfectly in the palm of a normal-sized human's hand. Its volume is just about right for satisfying the thirst of people who are really thirsty. It has just enough caffeine to pep you up, but not so much that you actually realize you're in an artificially induced state of stimulation. And most of us say amen to that. Its contents are always the same. Its quality never varies. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But how many scientific explanations about the nature of matter and the origins of the universe of this and this world do I have to give to convince you that this Coke just happened by chance? You would never believe that, would you? Nor would any logical thinking 7% scientists or 93% scientists who don't believe in God. They would never believe that this just happened. It was just a random collision of atoms that caused this Coke. Now, for your viewing pleasure, take a banana. Now, a banana fits perfectly in the palm of your hand. In fact, it fits better than, and I really needed this on there, but it broke off. The banana's old. Stayed in our Sunday school room all week. It fits better than the Coke can. It's been thoughtfully made, or Coke bottle. It's been thoughtfully made. It has a non-slip surface, which is pretty good, right? You need that. It comes with a time-sensitive indicator. If it's green, it says wait a little while. If it's yellow, it says go for it. If it's like this, it says you're too late, buddy. The banana's top, like a Coke can, like the bottle has a screw top. This has a convenient pop top. And if it's just the right stage of eating, it even gives a little click when you open it to let you know that it's ready to eat, right? Pretty ingenious. But then, not only that, it has perforated lines so that when you peel it, I love bananas. I'll eat a banana. It peels into 4 pieces, and it hangs gracefully to cover your hand, so if you're a germaphobe, you don't have to worry about it. Unlike the Coke bottle, you throw this out, you get arrested because you're littering. This is biodegradable. The wrapper is biodegradable. And if I never drink this because I keep it just because it's got my name on it, it doesn't do any good. Oops. Just don't step on it. This is a little past ripe. Yeah, too late, buddy. But if you never eat this and it falls off the banana tree and falls to the ground, then you know what happens? A whole new plant comes about. So basically, this gives us an endless supply of food. The fruit is the perfect size and shape for the human mouth. And before it broke, it even pointed right towards your mouth when you're eating it. I mean, how convenient is that? No wonder the Bible says that your works are wonderful, and I know this very well. It's better than a Coke bottle. From looking at the design of a banana, I can conclude that there is a creator. Can you? And that's just a banana. And he loves to delight his people through their senses. Y'all can't smell what I can smell. I smell this banana. And it smells great. That's the second one. Uh-oh, time to answer the phone. That's quite all right. Was that you? Oh, I almost said your name. Well, let me go to number 3. Yeah, well, your prescription is ready. The third evidence for the existence of God is morality. And we're going to call that the anthropological argument. The relationship between morality and the existence of God can be summed up in this way. Objective moral absolutes do not exist if God does not exist. Objective moral absolutes do exist. Therefore, God exists. Okay? Now, let me kind of tell you a little bit about that. If there is no supreme judge to declare what is right and wrong, then behavior we declare to be wrong is really a matter of personal preference. And most of us would say, well, that's ridiculous. But there are people who say, well, I believe in that. I don't believe that there are any moral absolutes. And then I say, especially if they drive a nice car, well, say I want to go get in your car and drive it for about a year and a half. Would that be okay? Well, no, that's wrong. That's stealing. Well, who says? Well, the law says. Well, what law? Well, the law of the land. Well, who made that up? And where did that come from? And on what basis do we decide what is right and wrong? I feel in my heart it's okay for me to drive your car for a year and a half while you keep paying for it. I absolutely feel that way, without a doubt. So you're going to tell me that's wrong based on what? Most people would agree that raping a child is morally wrong, but on what basis do we make such a judgment? Most people would say, well, society has deemed that that was wrong. But is society a reliable arbitrator of what is right and wrong? No, absolutely not. Certain societies in history have declared it permissible for human beings to own other human beings. Certain societies have said, we're going to kill this person in order to appease our gods. We have an awareness of the supernatural. We have an awareness of what is right and what is wrong, and it is within us. Now, that doesn't fit with Darwin's principle of survival of the fittest. When you start talking about martyrs and selflessness and sacrifice, that doesn't work with evolution. A better explanation for man's awareness of God is that such awareness is rooted in reality. We believe what we believe because there is something in there. Something that prompts us to believe. Our desire for morality points to the existence of one who can fulfill that morality. C.S. Lewis talked about that fulfillment. He said it this way. He said, creatures are not born with desires unless satisfaction for those desires exist. A baby feels hunger. Well, there's such a thing as food. If a little duckling wants to swim, well, there's water where they can do that very thing. Men feel sexual desire. Well, there is such a thing as sex. If I find myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. End quote. We have a desire for morality because there is something that can meet that desire. So, that is the third argument. The fourth argument is personal experience. We're going to call this the experiential argument. The Bible says that everyone can have an experience with God if they sincerely look for Him. Everybody can have an experience with God if you want it. Now, honestly, this is the least empirical form of evidence of the existence of God that we can come up with. But it is also the most exciting. What do I mean by that? Well, are billions of people who claim to be Christians all wrong? I mean, there are over 7 billion people in this world, and over 1 billion of them say that they are believers in Jesus Christ. Are they all wrong? The Bible says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. You can have an experience with God. You can meet Him as a personal God. It also says that we were made to experience God. God has planted eternity in the human heart. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Now let me give you some examples of people in the Bible, but historical figures, people who weren't very positive toward God. Let me give you an example. How about Nebuchadnezzar? One of the most powerful men of the first millennium BC. As emperor of Babylonia from 605 BC, he built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the world. He controlled most of Mesopotamia. Nebuchadnezzar was a polytheist, believing that there were just a pantheon of gods. The story makes his way into the Bible because at a critical juncture in his life, he had an experience with God that left him. This man who was a demon said this, after his experience with God. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and glorified him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal kingdom. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. Naaman, about 825 BC, commander of the Syrian army. He was in the midst of a stellar military career. He contracted leprosy, and his belief system was like Nebuchadnezzar's, and it encompassed the surrounding beliefs of his time. He was an animist, and he believed that gods inhabited rivers and mountains and all those kind of things. And he is attempting to find a cure for his leprosy. Naaman ventured outside his comfort zone, and he prayed to the God of Israel to heal him. And God did. And Naaman said this, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel." Look at the experience of the followers of Jesus. They were not expecting his resurrection. Are y'all watching AD? Y'all watching that? It's pretty good. I've seen the first two, of course. It's pretty good. They didn't think that they would see him again. They were hiding. They were cowering. They were scared to death. But when they saw the resurrected Jesus, everything changed. When they experienced the resurrected Jesus, everything changed. And thousands upon thousands have given their life to Christ. What happened to these people? They had an experience with God. An experience is strong evidence of the existence of God. And no one can dispute your experience. Now, it is subjective evidence, but it is subjective because you've seen it and nobody else has. You can't replicate your experience with God in a laboratory. You can't make it happen again. But even though your experience with the supernatural may differ from mine, the fact is so many have experienced God in a meaningful way that it's hard to argue against the fact that he exists. And look at your own life as a follower of Christ. You should be able to have an experiential proof that God exists. And that is because of the last argument. Number 5 is Jesus. And for those of us who believe in him, I call him the indisputable argument. Now, you can't use that term if you're arguing with an atheist or someone who is agnostic or doubting God, because indisputable argument that Jesus was the Son of God will throw them off. But the life of Jesus is one of the greatest evidences of the existence of God. It is a historical fact that Jesus Christ lived on the earth 3 or 4 BC until about 30 AD. Can't deny that. History, not just the Bible, but other historians know without a doubt that Jesus Christ lived on the earth during that time. Jesus claimed to be God. That in and of itself was unique. Muhammad and Joseph Smith both claimed to be prophets, but they never claimed to be God. You have Buddha and Confucius. They were silent on the idea of God. Only Jesus said, "I am God." Now that leaves us with 3 options. Jesus was crazy, Jesus was untruthful, or Jesus was who he said he was. You've heard it said he's either a lunatic, a liar, or he is the Lord. And when we consider the evidence of the life of Jesus, we, like the Roman centurion at the cross, we too will say, truly, this was the Son of God.